Thank you, Andrew. As you've heard, my name is Lynn Johansson. Is my mic working okay? Okay, good. I am an entrepreneur. I have a 30-year-old business, but I'm only 35. I started when I was 5. And I have 2 startups on the go because I didn't have enough to do in my spare time. Like some of you, I'm a boomer with children, so that means I'm in the check writing phase of life. I got involved with the succession issue back in 2005. And what I found is it's not enough to just green your business for today. You must include greening in your succession plan, and here's why. Greening your business is about radically changing your business to be more productive. And you must include it in your valuation because it's going to have a profound impact on the valuation of your business. It does not matter what sector you are in, what size of business you have, where you are located, greening is the color of success. If you've not started to green your business, some of the insights today I hope will shake the tree a little bit. So, are you ready? Good. If greening your business is such a smart idea, why have we not all done it already? Some companies are experiencing as much as an 81% improvement in profit. So, if that's such a great idea, why aren't we doing it? I'm not pressing right now. Now, Gregory Bateson, one of Margaret Mead's husbands, put it very neatly. The problem is the way humans think and the way nature operates is a big gap in between. And so what that does is that actually translates into 7 common sort of reactions. I'm going to cover 3 today. The first one is, it's not my problem. These owners of companies believe that the money makes the world go round, and so they don't see themselves as being agents of change in this matter. And so, but the problem comes, of course, is the earth came first, humans came second, and the economy came third. But they're operating their businesses as if the planet doesn't matter. But this is your home, and my home, and they're not paying attention to it. What's the next response? Well, the next response is the perception that size doesn't matter. While your individual business is unlikely to cause the damage of the magnitude of the BP Gulf oil spill, what you do does make an impact. And it's these little impacts that we all make every day that all add up. Then they're changing the face of the surface of the planet. These changes are happening as we speak. You cannot ignore them, and you can't move to Mars. So big or small, what you do matters. And everything you do has an impact. You have the power to make change. Now, how does this work? I want everybody in the room, please take a deep breath and hold it. Now I'm going to count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Now exhale. Thank you. That was very well done. You took in air that contains a gaseous chemical called oxygen. The oxygen went from your lungs into your heart and did something that we take for granted every day, and it came back as another gaseous chemical called carbon dioxide. So what you just did, you had an impact on the environment. Congratulations. Sometimes there are unintended outcomes. In a business situation, when these emissions occur, it's called a fugitive emission. In humans, when this has occurred and some little methane escapes, we try to blame it on our dog. But it's still a social transgression. The point being, other people feel our impacts. The third response relates to the fact that we are blind to the problems that we create, so there's no reason to change. So let's look at them. This is actually a water problem. You can see the water going down the drain. The sink is actually up here. This picture I took when I was working with a training institute who was supposed to be providing sustainability training to others. But there was nothing in the sink. The water wasn't just dripping, it was running freely and over the edge down the one, and this was hot water. Now, this is waste. Waste is typically 10%. I mean, what you're paying for is actually 10% of the actual cost that it's costing you to do this. Waste is something that we see every day, but we don't recognize it as being a sign of inefficiency of our business. And it's also a very clear message about lost profit. Typically, when you pay to have this stuff hauled away, it's actually only 10% of the actual cost. The rest is typically dismissed as being the cost of doing business. But if you're paying $1,500 for this before taxes, then your actual cost is much likely more closer to $15,000. Waste is one of the most common, inefficient ways that we lose money and we impact the environment. There's actually 10 of them, and I'm going to address 2 today. One is the impact that humans' lack of knowledge and skills has on creating waste, and the other one will do energy, because that's a favorite topic of many. And energy has a domino effect on all the other causes of waste. Now, as we do not believe and we do not see these things, what happens is we maintain old habits and we have outdated technologies. For example, in the manufacturing business, we tend to like to do 3 things. We heat something up, we whack it into shape, and then we cool it down. Or we add chemicals to the mix. When we add chemicals, of course, chemicals don't stop reacting at the door, so we have more unintended consequences. And what we really need to do is we need to rethink our business, and we need to design with nature. We need to go with the flow and eliminate the waste. And when we do this, there's actually money to be made in doing this. Now let's switch over to energy. I'm sure that's all a favorite topic for many. How many people here are unhappy with the amount they're paying for energy today? 1, 2, 3, oh, a few more fingers. You're right. Energy is the currency of productivity. Fuel and energy costs were seen as the top biggest concern for Canadian Federation of Independent Business members. It's usually about 25% of small businesses' total input costs, and those costs are rising. Yet, if energy is such a hot topic, how come we're still using it as if it's free? When you look at a picture like this, and you see all these office towers lit up at night, where nobody's working, you kind of wonder and understand that as long as energy remains a line item on your bill, it's going to get more painful. Now, people don't tend to associate their use of energy as being a cause of heat and light pollution. We tend to focus on the ends, the things that energy gives us. So when we're plugging in our computer, whether we're running our cameras or our computers or our printers, driving to meetings, we just don't see those things. So what evidence do we do that change is possible? Well, people like this. This is actually Tom Rand. And Tom Rand is a venture capitalist, and he's also author of a book called Kick the Fossil Fuel Habit. And Tom not only can prove to you that energy, it shouldn't be a cost, it should be actually a revenue generation. And he did it because he and his partner bought an abandoned building in Toronto. This is actually on College Street. And they turned it into this charming little hotel called the Planet Traveler, and there's his solar on the roof. Now, he did everybody a big favor as well, is he also put into the ground geothermal access in the laneway. And kudos to Toronto. They've actually passed a bylaw that other people can have access to laneways and parkettes for doing geothermal heat. And what he's really trying to prove to you is energy can be a revenue source. So whether you have underutilized space on your roof, whether you have an option for geothermal or district heating, or you're in the downtown core of Toronto, and you could tap into that deep water option, there are different ways you can make energy actually a revenue generation opportunity. So what do we need to do differently to get a hold of this opportunity for ourselves? Well, quite simply, we need to do better with less, not more with less. If we do better with less, we're going to use less energy, less water, generate less waste, fewer chemicals, we're going to use less money, have less time involved. And the reason we want to do that is we really want to drive our productivity up. When we incorporate green into the process, and we also incorporate quality into the process, we're actually going to be driving down our costs. That results in reducing our footprint, and we're going to become more profitable and more prosperous as a result. Now, this is especially important by the year 2036, because we're going to have, by that time, another 1.36 billion people on the planet. Let's think about that. That means, actually, in this room, for every 3 seats, we're going to have to make room for a 4th person. So can you, kind of shove over a little? And if some of the people in that group, which is true, we're going to have many more boomers who are going to be dependent on the rest of society by that period of time. So in that space of 3, not only do you have to make space for a 4th person, but one of those spaces, at a minimum, will have to be wheelchair accessible, if not 2. So, I'm going to move over a little more, please. Now, where does this take us next? Well, what we really need to do is we need to figure out how to make your company more efficient and more productive. And I can bet you, I even brought it, I can bet you a loony or a toonie that your company could be more efficient. I know that you can save between 1 and 16% of costs when you start to incorporate green. Now, what that means is if your company is getting an annual turnover of $500,000 and you have $125,000 in costs, you could pick up between $1,250 and $20,000 just by doing behavior change. I wanted to let that number sit with you for a minute. Veriform, it's a metal fabricating company. They started a little bit differently. They spent $21,000, get this number correctly, $685 by putting some gadgets in. They got back $71,818.02. They had an ROI of 331%. And they reduced their carbon footprint to the equivalent of taking 38 cars off the road. How long do you think it took them to do this? 3.7 months. Wouldn't that be great if some of that money came back in your pocket? Because we know in Canada, if we took these numbers forward, 1%, if we could save all small businesses 1%, collectively that would be equivalent to $2 billion. 16%, that's over $22 billion. Wouldn't you like to have some of that in your pocket? Now, what I need you to do is I need you to think outside. Not just outside the box. I want you to think outside. But I want you to work inside the box. Because I want to help you identify what it is that you have or do that's causing you to have this extra waste. Now, it's never easy to start this process because you have to discern things that you're doing every day in a different way. But there are simple things you can do. Now, let's see what other people have done to apply this. This, a real person, Brian Shank. Brian owns Noah's Inn in Newstead, Ontario. And Brian has this lovely little inn, and he was concerned about his waste costs. And one day, he overheard some people talking in his restaurant about how to reduce waste costs. He was able to reduce his monthly waste costs by 225%. How did he do that? He got himself 4 of these little things. They're a green cone. It's a food digester. Now, there's about 18 inches that sit in the bottom of the ground. You dump the food in the top, and nature does its thing. I've actually used one for 24 years. The other thing is I spoke with Brian actually about 3 weeks ago, and while his costs in the last 2 years have only changed by $12, other people who are still using that 6 cubic yard container, they're paying around around $2,000 a year, and their prices have just gone up by 20%. He's paying, I think he said $48 a year for his waste costs now, for the things that he can't digest. Here comes the fun one. This is Paul Stamets. Paul Stamets is a mycologist, which means he's a mushroom dude. And he likes to call himself a fun guy. His hat is actually made out of tanned mushrooms. Now, Paul and his wife have used biomimicry to optimize their products. Biomimicry is the art and science of leveraging the efficiency of nature into designing new products and services. Now, nature's been around for 3.6 billion years. All that research has been done at no cost to you, but when you incorporate the kind of technologies that are in there, you can actually not only optimize your products and service, reduce your costs, but you can generally get a higher price for your product. Now, here's where the fun comes. Now, Paul's actually done some very interesting things using mushroom technology to address environmental problems, including addressing oil spills. I'm not going to do that today. But you can see this nice little box. Looks like a box. Paul actually sent me his book in this box. But this is where the box takes on a whole new dimension. I can take this box, I can deconstruct the box, and I can plant this in the backyard or on the property somewhere in my office. And I will be guaranteed a forest. Worst case scenario, 4 trees. So I am helping to reforest North America in this case. Not only can I do that, but I can upload the position of this active green, and I can get carbon credits for doing it. So how cool is that? Now, so that means me to, the question is, if these guys are all able to gain benefit from going green, what's your choice? If you do, you're part of the solution. If you don't do, you're part of the problem. Now, let's switch gears a little bit. Let's look how greening can actually impact your business in terms of valuation. How many people here want to retire in the next 10 to 15 years? So do I. There's a natural aversion to talking about succession. It's not the exit strategy, it's what comes next. Everybody wants to go to heaven. Nobody's dying to get there. Now, regardless of what strategy you use, you have to think about greening because this can affect not only your valuation, it can affect your relationship with your family and your community and the quality of your retirement. So a succession plan is really the story of your legacy. And what do you want? How do you want to be remembered? Let's say your intent is to transfer the business to a member of the family. How do you know that your business is green? And how do you know that you're not transferring a toxic business to somebody else, like a member of your family? If you haven't looked into this issue, the whole issue of intergenerational transfer is very stressful. And if you haven't done this, you might end up with something that you don't really like because there are skeletons in your closet that can affect you financially and emotionally. Don Schwerzler, a well-respected advisor in the States, told me this, and I want to quote it to be careful. The last 20 years, environmental risks and liability issues have become one of the most value-destructive factors facing family-owned businesses. That's got to hurt. Unfortunately, some businesses may be so riddled with environmental liability, the best option is to close. But this is not an overnight situation. You can't just close the business because if you do it and do it incorrectly, it could brand you as a social pariah in your community, and you don't want that. If your risk is high situation risk, I would suggest you go talk to an environmental lawyer and get it looked after properly. And by the way, I'm not a lawyer. The next story is a very good, a good ending to a bad situation. Mr. Jones had a lumber yard, and he had a very tidy yard, but he had one bad habit. He used to dump the oil that he changed from the forklift into the back 40. When he went to sell, he had to do some cleanup. Now, he thought his property was worth $600,000. When they finished the cleanup, how much did he get from the property? $60,000. 1 cup of oil can contaminate an area the size of an Olympic-sized pool. Now, not only do you have to make sure that you know what's in your own backyard, you have to look at the guy next door because things can travel underground that you don't see. So you want to make sure that you know where that pool is, and you don't want to keep up with the Joneses in this case. So by 2025, if you want to sell in the open market, you have to realize there's going to be a lot of competition. Stats say that there's going to be 600 to 700,000 companies that are going to be up for sale. So when a buyer has between 5 or 10 or 15 companies and they all have a good balance sheet, what's going to set you apart? Are you going to be seen as good value or not? This is Paul Rack. Remember that story I told you about before about Paul Rack? Well, Paul Rack is getting ready to sell his business. And what he's done is, in greening his business, he said, and I'll quote him again, "Going green has helped us create value for the company in that our products for the steel industry are more energy efficient. This differentiates our products from our competitors. In 3 years, when I'm ready to sell, I'll be able to get a higher price. We will not be selling just our equipment, but also our greener products that attain higher margins." That's a pretty good legacy story in the making. And Green is his next business venture he's going into. So going green is the color of success and for your succession plan. And I want to leave you with one last thought, and I urge you to think very carefully. What color will your legacy be? Thank you.